Welcome to Resiliency Redefined. I'm your host, Robyne, and I am thrilled to share with you information about resiliency, well-being, performance, education, business, parenting, and everything in between. I'm committed to joining you each week to talk about these big ideas and bring them into action, habits, tools, strategies, tactics that allow us to finally uncover what it takes to truly be well. And I'm just so excited that you're here. Welcome back to Resiliency Redefined. I'm your host, Robyne, and today I'm excited to be able to answer a question. And this is from Alicia. And Alicia says, Robyne, how do you have a difficult conversation? My first knee-jerk reaction is not well. I used to not do it well, but I have figured out a strategy and a framework that really helps in this area. And I thought it would be useful to be able to answer you, but also to share it with the listeners as well. So as always, please feel free to ask me any question, wonderment, curiosity. I want to be useful. And today's episode is dedicated to how do we have difficult conversations. Now, I wasn't kidding when I said I don't or not well, because difficult conversations has been an area in which I have struggled, historically in different contexts, different scenarios. Difficult conversations, I usually show up to them, or I previously used to show up to them in two different extremes. One would be I wouldn't, right? So absolute avoidance, ignore, override, and I would just decide that I don't like that person anymore, and I would let it burn. Or on the other side, I would show up so invested, hands on, hearts on, minds on, that I couldn't think of anything else, and I overcommitted to this was going to be the solution, that I'm going to have this difficult conversation. We are going to solve decades of issues or massive amounts of problems, and we are going to fix it in one conversation, and it would be exhausting. And more often than not, it wouldn't fare very well. So the reason I share that is because I think it's normal that many of us have a pretty fractured relationship with difficult conversations. Now, I am not a communication expert. There are some remarkable communication experts out there. Obviously, I'm going to throw some love to the one and only Phil M. Jones, the author of the best-selling book, Exactly What to Say. Phil knows what to say, exactly what to say, as a matter of fact. Some other great resources out there. I really appreciate Jefferson Fisher's approach. He's a lawyer, and he does a really great job with sharing scripts and ideas on how to have difficult conversations. So again, I just want to recognize and acknowledge the experts out there in the space. What I can share with you is what it takes to have a difficult conversation in relation to resiliency and personal development, especially for people who have maybe a wee bit of a tendency like me to struggle with difficult conversations. Let's lay the foundation. Nobody likes a difficult conversation. Okay, so there's not people who are they're so good at difficult conversations in the sense that they look forward to it and they love it. People who love the discomfort of a difficult conversation, I think that they actually have this underlying piece of the fact that they just like to fight with people, right? And they love to make other people uncomfortable. And we're not talking about that. That's a whole other form of pathology that I don't even want to touch. Those are the people that at this point in my life, will let that burn. You go do you. I'm not even going to try to have a conversation with you or engage with you. Or as my mother would say, don't even get in the ring, right? We can, just because you're invited to an argument doesn't mean you have to attend it. So we're not talking about arguments. What we're talking about is a genuine difficult conversation with when there's more at stake in terms of perhaps it's with a loved one, or maybe a colleague, or even a leader, or in a place where you want to actually preserve the relationship, because I think that's a different set of skills that is required to be able to do that in a way to make sure that you are okay and optimally they are okay, or at least we get to some place where we decide that maybe we're just not going to have this conversation, whatever the nature would be, but there is some type of an ending, there is a closure. So this foundation, so yes, there's this argumentative piece. That's not what we're talking about. And it was my dear friend Sue Saunders, the amazing Stu Saunders from Epic Community, who said, Robyne, there are some people who live to be outraged. Okay, so anybody who falls into that camp that says they like conversations that are awkward, or they love making people feel bad, or they love to fight, or they look for opportunities to be outraged, we're just going to move that aside because this episode isn't about that. This is about how do we have difficult conversations when we want to preserve them. Okay, so here's some of the takeaways that I have for you. Get ready to do some learning with me on this one. Okay, there's 3 C's before. Okay, there's 3 C's before we have this difficult conversation. And the goal or the aim of using those 3 C's is to create the right frame of mind, or what we like to call like the container or the guardrails to be able to do this. So the 3 C's are confidence, clarity, and control. What do I mean by that? So as Phil Jones likes to say, the worst time to think about what to say is when you're about to say it. The worst time to think about what you're going to say is when you're about to say it. So the confidence piece means it's in our preparation. It means that it's in the get a sense of, okay, what am I talking about? Why does this matter? Also remind yourself, I think too, of the fact that like this isn't something that we want to let burn. This is something we want to preserve. Or maybe you realize that, okay, I have confidence in the sense that this is something that I'm willing to let go of if we can't resolve this. Okay, so you're going to have confidence by your preparation. So again, the second C, clarity, comes in there. Having clarity of what is it that I'm trying to deliver, or what is it that I want to achieve. Just have some type of a goal, some type of a drive, some type of like, again, a container in which this makes sense. That being said, if you're trying to get to the clarity piece, is probably not having it with the person that you need to have the conversation with. This is when you jump on that call with your trusted friend, or maybe you do some journaling, some free flow writing to like get your ideas out. If we're going to have a difficult conversation, coming to the clarity with the person in question, I don't believe that ends well. So yes, sometimes people like to talk it out, but I think a mistake we often make in difficult conversations is we like talk it out with the person trying to get clarity about what are we talking about. Here's an example. I was just working with a group last week, and the leader said, I brought in this employee who clearly was not performing, and basically said, like, I don't even know what the problem is. I just have this feeling that you're underperforming. And I have this feeling that people don't really like you in the sense that they don't feel like you're a good teammate. And like, I don't know what we're talking about, but I just want to put this on the table. And I thought we could figure it out together. Okay, let's just hold space for a moment to think about why that conversation likely did not go well. It isn't the role of the person who is kind of engaging in terms of who's been invited to the conversation to help you get your clarity. Okay, so we want to have clarity what we're actually talking about. In the notion of that, we also, I think what's helpful is to talk about one thing. There's this propensity to like do the whole like kitchen sink approach where it's like this one time back in 3 years ago, you did this one thing, and this one time you did this thing. And, or again, just being really ambiguous like that leader was to their staff member, where they're like, I just have this vibe that you're underperforming. Like, can you imagine being called into a meeting that you didn't even know you were about to get called into, and somebody says like, I just have this vibe that you're underperforming? Like, oh my goodness, I would not respond well. I am not evolved enough as a human to handle that situation well. So to that person who was in that situation, the fact that you sat through it, like, wow, that's enormous amounts of regulation. I'm not involved enough to be able to do that. I digress. Okay, so we're going to have confidence in our preparation. So we know what we're trying to achieve. We know where the value of this relationship is, whether or not we need to preserve it, we're willing to let it go. Just kind of getting a framework okay, shouldn't have called that a framework. Getting a sense of the variables that matter. Okay. Now, the third C in the before the difficult conversation is control. And this isn't this idea that like I'm going to have this script and I'm going to deliver it in this perfect way and this is what they need to say back. And no, the control is you set the time and date in consultation with the person about we're going to have a difficult conversation. We don't just like drop into a difficult conversation. Again, I don't think that it ends well. I think the outcome won't be what you're hoping for. Could sound something like this. There's something I want to talk to you about. Would you let me know when you have time? I would like to think we could probably cover this in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is. Give them just a general sense of time. But this is important to me. And I want to make sure we give this conversation the time that it needs. When you have time, would you let me know? Okay. That's what I mean about the control. Like you are setting the parameters in terms of making sure that there's a mutually agreed upon time where you can show up. And then with your preparation and with clarity, you can then go into this conversation. Now, I was talking about this actually just a wee while ago, same with that group who had that one leader who wasn't, the leader was picking up vibes. Anyway, and what they said is this person had tried to say to someone, this is a really important conversation I want to have with you. It's something that really matters to me and it matters to our relationship. Would you let me know when you would have time to have this conversation? Now, the person who they were trying to have a conversation with looked at their calendar and said, like, honestly, this quarter is like so full. I could probably squeeze you in quarter four, as in like 3 months from now. If this is something that is so important to you and the person is saying like we can talk about it in like 3 or 4 months, if it's not like a work scenario where like maybe that somehow could make sense, but I can't imagine being in a relationship with anyone, even in a professional setting, where if I told them that this is really important that we have this conversation, that they would push it that many months away. Now, maybe there are scenarios where that makes sense to do it. I would really struggle with any type of a professional relationship where they said, we'll circle back in 3 months to hear how you are feeling, given that you just told me it was important. So I think that in itself is a response. It's the same how I said to the person, when you ask somebody, like, are you available to meet so we can talk about this thing that's really important to me and for us, and they don't respond to you, that is a response, right? That is such a response in itself. So again, this is where we can take back what's within our control and decide, is this really worth pursuing? And sometimes I think not getting in the ring is actually a strategy. It gives you a lot of clarity in terms of that role. Are you ready to receive? I appreciate that people are giving and doing and outputting like in such a big way right now. And it's contributing to our burnout on a significant level. And what I'm excited to tell you about on July 8th for our next iteration of our Stress Wisely Labs, this is all about learning to receive, opening yourself up to the opportunity for recovery, for rest, for renewal, using the season of summer to receive all of the good that is out there so that way you can feel well resourced, be ready and steady for whatever comes your way. So again, the next iteration of our Stress Wisely Labs is just around the corner, and we are about filling you back up with energy, good ideas, research-informed practices that will help you make the most of the beautiful season that is summer. And we've saved you a seat. I'm looking forward to having you there. Please check out the website for all of the information and know that this is the time where you get to get that bucket filled back up so we can continue to do the good work for ourselves and for others. So July 8th, I'll see you there. I look forward to our time together. Bye for now. Okay, so I hope you're with me so far. This is the pre-workout, or as Phil would say, the work before the work. So we call confidence, clarity, and control. So once you have those variables set, this is, again, a gentle invitation for you, as I have a few rules that I follow now as somebody who wanted to get better at having awkward conversations. is rule number one is no small talk. And what I mean by that is that when we walk into that room or we step aside or wherever we are to be able to have this conversation that we both know we have decided this is where we're going to have this conversation, don't start with like, how are you today? Or how are the kids? Do you have any plans for the summer? How's work going? Heck no, we are not there for small talk. We are there to get to the point. So I don't start with any small talk. How I start is with like clear, setting the tone, or this idea of setting the table where I will say, thank you for being willing to have this conversation, or thank you for showing up for this conversation. Now, if I am going to have to deliver bad news, I actually probably wouldn't even say thank you for coming to this conversation. I would get right to the point and say, we got to talk about something that I don't think you're going to like. Like when we are having a difficult conversation, just get to the point, fast to the point, not to the degree that we are rude. And I do think people interchange this idea about, oh, I'm just blunt. No. I think people call it blunt, but secretly you're actually wildly rude. No. This is about being clear because we both acknowledge this doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of this feedback. Okay. So I'm going to get right to the point. And the question that I love to ask, and this was inspired by Jefferson Fisher's framework that he talks about in his book, is I need your help understanding this. Okay. So thank you. So let's say I'm going to, this is a actual real world scenario. I supported someone just a few weeks ago who had to have a difficult conversation with one of their peers, colleagues, and it was around body odor. Yeah. Okay. Cringy. Yeah. Like imagine having to have a conversation to be like, dude, you stink. And you can't say that. You can't, like, we can't come out of the gates. I imagine that's a nature violation somewhere. And that just would be awful. And maybe some people would say like, it's just easier just to like, gosh, that one, Band-Aid, boom, you stink, boom, move on, fix that. Okay. But in this particular scenario, I said, okay, this isn't a matter of like, I have to give you bad news, although the person might perceive it as bad news. It's just like, we just got to solve this. Okay. So, hey, thanks for showing up for this conversation. And I need your help being able to have this conversation because it's come to my attention that people have shared that that there's an issue with body odor. And I need some help understanding what I can do as the leader to be able to find a solution. And then just stop. We don't have to over explain it. We don't have to tell them how awkward this is. We don't want to make like guesses or, this kind of idea like, oh, I imagine you have a really far bike commute to work and that's probably why. Like we don't even have to try and make excuses or justify it. It's literally like, hey, I need your help with this issue and I'd like to find a solution. So get to the point, be able to be clear. And let them know how you feel, but not in that, oh, this is super awkward to be able to have this conversation with you. I mean, like once you say it, I feel optimistic that we can find a solution, right? I feel encouraged that we can do something about this. Or I feel, again, just appreciative that we have started the conversation. So the I feel isn't around like, oh, I feel this is super awkward or, I feel, really nervous having this conversation. It's setting the intention on a forward focus. Okay, so let's just do a little recap. No small talk. We're going to get to the point very quickly using the sentence, I need your help. And as soon as someone says or hears, like, I need your help, it puts us on the same team. We become teammates. We're not adversarial. We are actually allies because people, I think, genuinely want to help people. I also sometimes when I'm working with leaders, instead of saying, I need your help, I might say, I need your insight into this, right? Now, of course, in sharing insight is a form of help, but maybe the leader doesn't feel comfortable asking for help, which we can dedicate an entire other episode to. But for this case, in this moment, we're going to say, hey, I would really appreciate your insight here. Now, another way we kind of think about this is about understanding that we want to kind of move to a solution or to an outcome, which could be we're going to choose to go separate ways or we're going to choose to not continue this because we're just going to call it. Now there's the four D's, because who doesn't love a good little framework? So once we get into this conversation, okay, we are going to like discover what we're talking about. Okay, so we're going to be like, I just want to be clear, we're talking about this. We're going to define what this is. So we're not talking about something that happened 5 months ago. We're not talking about something that happened years ago. We're literally talking about something where it's still within our agency to do something about. So we're going to define what we're talking about. It's not the kitchen sink. It's literally this one thing. And then we're going to open the conversation for discussion, right? That's hey, I need your help understanding how to feel about this. Or I need your help understanding what this means or what this represents or how we work through this. After in that discussion, when we work through that discussion, I encourage us to decide. Okay, so we're going to make a next steps, a decision. And I've been in difficult conversations where I've actually decided that this isn't salvageable. We get to this point where I realize that I'm trying to have a conversation with someone who's unskilled, right? Who is perhaps unskilled, or maybe we get to a place where we realize this person, again, is living to be outraged. They're looking for an argument. I'm not going to stay in it trying to prove my point. I will walk away from a conversation, and I will leave conversations a lot sooner than I used to, because I'm just not going to get into the ring. And if I get into the ring and realize this isn't what I signed up for or what I was hoping to do, I'm going to just walk away. We don't have to stay in situations when we don't want to. And this came, my friends, this deep learning came from one of these humiliating experiences that I had with a former boss who kept me, and I wrote about it actually in Stress Wisely. They literally kept me on a Zoom call, and they were like belittling me, and they were correcting me. They were forcing me to read out loud, because I had made a mistake in this email. And they were like, I want you to read it out loud. And because it was just the two of us in the Zoom call, he thought that this was appropriate, for him to make me read out loud in front of him. And I don't know if you all have ever had an experience where you are just being called out and you're being humiliated and you're still in it. And I'm just like, why am I in it? Especially when it was on a Zoom call. Leave meeting. There is literally an X in the corner that's like the escape hatch. But I stayed in this conversation for way, 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 way too long. And I honestly think this person like enjoyed watching me like cry. Like they enjoy just quote teaching me a lesson. Yeah, let's just say I no longer we're not friends. And we let that one burn. Anyway, so those situations of leaving as soon as we recognize this isn't fruitful, this isn't going in the direction that we want to, just walk away. Like end the call, walk away. Now, side digression, somebody recently asked me, they read that passage in my book and they're like, why would you have stayed? It was a fawning response. Like my fawning response was absolutely activated. And remember, fawning is a reflex. It is not a choice. And I just sat there, just placated, and just was, again, just wishing for it to end. And I felt like in that moment, my best way to protect myself was just to take it. Lesson learned. So we might decide that we're going to solve this. We're going to find a solution. We also might decide that, you know what? I'm not going to have this conversation. So again, to bring us back to kind of the genesis of what we started to talk about, when we go into these conversations, making sure that you are prepared, recognizing nobody likes to have difficult conversations. This doesn't feel good for people. Also, real relationships, like relationships that can go to the next level, where we can be able to grow and to learn and maybe unlearn or understand our behavior better, understand our interactions. Relationships improve when people are able to get to the other side of a difficult conversation. Like when we're able to get to the other side of it, when we get to go through it, not ignoring it, but when we're able to go through it, it actually brings people closer together. So there is this kind of idea, like the light at the end of the tunnel, that if we can, and that's not always a good analogy, but the notion is we can get to the other side and it will actually improve relationships. So again, going into it with confidence, clarity, and control, right? Talking about one specific thing. We're not going to do the small talk. We're going to get down to business. I need your help understanding how to feel about this. I need your help, or I need your insight to know what this could be, whatever the difficult thing that you're talking about. And then we're going to, again, just be like, I'm feeling really encouraged that we can solve this, or I'm feeling really optimistic that this is going to actually improve our ability to show up for each other or work together. I hope that's useful. A couple other ideas that I do just want to share in terms of like, these are just some of like kind of rapid fire grab and go conversation pieces that I picked up along the way that we talked about again last week that I wanted to share. This is the idea that it's praise in public and correct in private. Praise in public, correct in private. We don't need to call people out and do a teachable moment in front of other people. And I see this happen so often in workplaces as a wee bit of a flex, right? Like, people trying to like, oh, if I make a correction or if I interrupt somebody, it's like, look how much I know, look how good I am. And quick example, I just a wee while ago was on a stage and there was like 500 people. And at the end of the talk, I had an open floor Q&A, and I had just shared my personal story of overcoming addiction. I was a high school dropout. I had this catastrophic car accident, and I had just finished sharing that. And because of time, we transitioned really quickly into open floor Q&A. And this gentleman like literally ran up to the microphone who was on the floor, and but just kind of setting the stage. Like people were crying. There were people that were crying. Like we just had this amazing experience. And I think again, these moments can be really, really remarkable when we have great learning. And had this moment, people were still crying. I was feeling overwhelmed because there was a standing ovation, which was so generous of this group to go. And then I turned around to be like, okay, here's the question from the floor. Please go ahead. And he said, on slide 4, you have a spelling mistake and a spacing issue on your slide. Good. Like I actually had to bite my tongue, and I didn't say good. I said, thank you for pointing that out. Now, this is the interesting thing. I had very strong feelings about what type of person thinks that this is a good choice. But what was more fascinating to me was the look on the faces of all the people around. So, what I mean by that is sometimes we don't have to correct other people either. In that moment, maybe he thought he was doing me a solid. I have received an email post presentation. This was, again, not the same slide 4 mistake, another spelling mistake. And somebody sent me an email and they said, like, hey, was that your event? Great. Just want to flag for you. There was an issue with the translation. I don't think it was translated correctly, but I just wanted to give you the heads up before you share it with other people. Cool. Thank you. I have mad respect for somebody who corrects in private. I have big issue with people who correct in front of people, especially when they're doing it. I think sometimes, again, they think that they're being helpful, maybe, but I also think more often than not, people are doing it because it's like a bit of a flex. Okay. So correct, like quietly to the side, but praise in public, right? Let other people know that people are doing a good work. Okay. Other pieces, when you're having a difficult conversation, especially with your teenager, my invitation is have it ear to ear, not eye to eye. Ear to ear conversations like car conversations or windshield conversations, commute conversations, like they are gold. Okay. Those are invaluable. You will get so much more ear to ear than you will eye to eye. Okay. So that's my other gentle invitation on that one. Another piece as well is understanding this notion that, again, when we're having, you're having a difficult conversation, maybe it's with a teenager, maybe it's with a loved one, is to put a time limit on it. Now, not in terms of like start the clock, but just let people know, hey, I just want to take 15 minutes, or could we talk about this for about 10 minutes? Anything after that, I just don't think it's actually like a one topic conversation. I really don't think that there's many topics that it's like this one thing that you can't probably get to some place of like discovery and decision after like half an hour. And if it is something that requires more intervention and time, you want to make sure that this isn't just a kind of a conversation in passing or a conversation where you've just set aside 10, 15 minutes to have it. You might need a mediator. And people have said to me before, they're like, I can't have like an intermediary or a mediator with like my husband or my partner or my boss. If it's something that you don't think that you can tackle in like under 30 minutes, I do actually think you need support. It's not realistic that we can be in a stressful, stress-inducing state of distress for long periods of time and not have support. So I'm sure I'm going to rock some boats on this one where people are like, you should be able to talk to your partner about a difficult topic. Agreed, 100%. But if we are talking about just one variable, like one thing, and it takes that much time, I think we would actually want to be able to have some support or break it into multiple conversations, not trying to put someone time under tension like we use when we're talking about physical activity. I'm not going to put somebody time under tension expecting them to just get better at communicating. I don't think our biology works like that. Okay, my friends, I hope that was helpful. There was a lot coming out there. But the last piece I want to share to kind of land this, and this is so important to me when people are having difficult conversations with people that they have been hurt by. It's recognizing that sometimes, again, the person we're having the conversation with, they might be unskilled, but I think we need support having those really big conversations, which is why we might need an ally in the room or a mediator, because there's this risk when somebody, for example, has been hurt significantly or even traumatized by this person. I don't think one-on-one unpacking it is always the best way forward. And what I mean by that is when I'm working with groups and people share with me that, I just keep going into this difficult conversation, Robyne, with this person because like I need to prove to them that I'm not who they think I am, or I need to convince them I'm not a bad person, or, I need to convince them that I'm not the villain in their story. My friends, that's a trauma response. If we're trying to convince somebody who's abused us that we didn't deserve to be abused, it's the same idea. And I've shared this before on an earlier podcast. There's this old saying, proverb story. I don't know what to call it to give it its due reference. But, this idea that like when a person is bit by a snake, we don't chase the snake and ask it, why did you bite us? And so often when people are talking about having difficult conversations, I'm worried that they're actually asking not how do I have a difficult conversation per se, it's how do I ask a snake why it bit me? And I would just do just a moment of pause that if that's the conversation that you're actually trying to have, asking the snake, why did it bite me? Or, asking the shark or whatever that threatening predator was that hurt you, why did you do that to me? Or trying to convince them that you're not a bad person. You didn't deserve to be treated that way. To me, that's not a difficult conversation. That's a conversation that maybe you want to have with a trusted ally or a therapist or someone, because I think you really run the risk of getting yourself hurt again. And as somebody who tends to repeat what she doesn't repair, I did that for many years under the guise of, I just need to get better at difficult conversations, when I realized actually I needed to actually stop having conversations with people who are okay with hurting me. Okay, my friends, that was a lot. I hope that answered your question on how to have a difficult conversation. So please feel free to keep asking me whatever you want to hear about. I want to be useful. I'm here to be of service. You're welcome to email, reach out on socials, however it's best for you to keep asking those questions. I'm so appreciative. I hope there was at least one little takeaway. And if you could do me a favor, let me know if there was a takeaway there for you. I appreciate so many of you are downloading all around the world. People are downloading this podcast and sharing it. I appreciate those reviews. I appreciate the sharing. And again, I would love to hear what learning piece resonated with you today. And so thanks for listening. I hope this wasn't a difficult conversation. Okay. You're great. Take good care and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for spending time with this podcast episode today. I hope you found something helpful in Resiliency Redefined. Please feel free to share it with somebody who you might think could benefit. Maybe there was something useful, something in particular that you think you could pay forward. Also, if you have a moment, please feel free to rate and review this podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcast. It means the world to me. And again, thanks for your time. Thank you for your interest. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.